A storm rages as Lila Grayson locks the clinic until a bloodied puppy drags itself to her door, its eyes pleading for life. Breaking every rule could cost her everything. But this stray hides a secret tied to a silent girl's grief. One choice ignites a chain of danger, trust, and revelation. Dare to step into the shadows where a spark could save them, or burn it all down. Welcome to Frenchie Tales, where every bark tells a story of adventure, heart, and healing. Join us for thrilling tales of Frenchies and the lives they touch. Subscribe now, like this video. The wind howled like a wounded animal outside the small rural veterinary clinic, rattling the windows and sending sheets of rain crashing against the glass. Inside, Lila Grayson leaned against the counter, her shoulders slumped from the weight of a 12-hour shift. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sterile glow over the empty waiting room. It was nearly midnight, and the last patient, a tabby with a stubborn ear infection, had left hours ago. Lila's hazel eyes, heavy with exhaustion, flicked to the clock on the wall. 11:53 p.m. Just a few more tasks and she could stumble home to a lumpy couch and a lukewarm cup of tea. She dragged a damp cloth across the steel examination table, the metallic clink of instruments echoing faintly in the stillness. The clinic smelled of antiseptic and wet fur, a familiar blend that usually comforted her. Tonight, though, it felt oppressive, mingling with the ache in her back and the dull throb behind her temples. She'd treated 7 animals that day. 2 spays, a dental cleaning, a snakebite case, and a handful of routine checkups. Each one had demanded her full attention, leaving her drained but satisfied. Lila loved her job as a veterinary assistant, even if it meant long hours and little recognition. It was a stepping stone, she told herself, toward her dream of becoming a full-fledged vet. Almost done, she muttered, her voice barely audible over the storm. She tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear and moved to the supply closet, checking the inventory with mechanical precision. Bandages, syringes, antibiotics, everything in its place. Her fingers brushed against a roll of gauze as she mentally ticked off her closing list: lock the kennels, sweep the floors, secure the front door. The routine was second nature, a rhythm that steadied her after the chaos of the day. Outside, thunder rumbled, shaking the old building's frame. Lila glanced at the windows, watching rain streak down in relentless waves. Some night, she sighed, pulling her worn jacket tighter around her slender frame. She grabbed her keys from the desk, the jingle cutting through the storm's roar, and headed for the light switch. Her hand hovered over it, ready to plunge the clinic into darkness, when a sound stopped her cold. It was faint, almost lost beneath the wind, a high-pitched whine, sharp and desperate. Lila froze, her breath catching in her throat. She tilted her head, straining to hear it again. There it was, a weak, pitiful cry coming from the front of the building. Her heart gave a quick, unsteady thud. "What the hell?" she whispered, stepping away from the switch. Moving to the security monitor mounted near the desk, Lila cycled through the grainy camera feeds. The parking lot was a blur of rain and shadows, her beat-up pickup truck the only vehicle in sight. The side alley showed nothing but puddles and swaying branches, but when she switched to the front entrance, her breath hitched. The image was dark, distorted by the downpour, but something moved, a small huddled shape inching toward the door. "No way," she murmured, squinting at the screen. It was alive, whatever it was, and it was struggling. Lila's instincts kicked in, honed by years of working with animals. She grabbed a flashlight from the drawer and hurried to the front door, her sneakers squeaking on the tile. The whining grew louder as she approached, more insistent now, cutting through the storm like a plea. She flicked on the exterior lights and turned the deadbolt, her hands trembling slightly. Not from the cold, but from a growing sense of urgency. Pulling the door open, she braced herself against the wind as rain lashed her face. The sight that greeted her stole the air from her lungs. There, collapsed on the wet concrete doorstep, was a tiny border collie puppy. Its black and white fur was matted with blood and mud, plastered to its shivering body. The puppy's front legs dragged uselessly beneath it, twisted at unnatural angles, leaving smears of crimson on the ground as it tried to crawl forward. Its hind legs pushed weakly, barely propelling it an inch at a time. Lila's stomach twisted. The little thing was a wreck, limping, bloodied and clinging to life by a thread. "Oh my God," she breathed, dropping to her knees beside it. Rain soaked through her jeans, but she didn't care. The puppy's head lifted slightly, and its eyes met hers. Deep, soulful brown eyes, clouded with pain, but burning with a stubborn spark. That look hit Lila like a punch. It wasn't just fear or suffering. It was a plea, a silent demand to be seen, to be saved. She'd seen plenty of injured animals in her 2 years at the clinic, but none had ever looked at her quite like this. Without thinking, she shrugged off her jacket and draped it over the puppy, shielding it from the rain. "Hey, little one," she whispered, her voice soft but steady. "What happened to you?" The puppy whimpered, a faint sound that broke her heart. Up close, she could see the damage more clearly. Its front paws were mangled, bones shifting unnaturally under the skin, and a deep gash ran along one leg, oozing blood into the puddles beneath it. It was a miracle it had made it this far. Lila's mind raced. Clinic protocol flashed through her head like a warning siren. No owner, no treatment. After hours, strays were supposed to be reported to animal control and left in a holding pen until morning. It was a rule drilled into her from day one. Protect the clinic from liability. Conserve resources. Follow the chain of command. She could hear Dr. Hargrove's stern voice in her memory. "We're not a charity, Grayson. Stick to the rules or you're out." Breaking them could cost her job, her references, her shot at vet school, everything she'd worked for. But then the puppy whimpered again, its tiny body trembling under her jacket, and Lila's resolve cracked. She couldn't leave it here, not like this. Not with those eyes begging her to act. "Screw it," she muttered, scooping the puppy into her arms as gently as she could. It was lighter than she expected, its ribs sharp beneath her fingers. "You're not dying on my watch." She stood, cradling the puppy against her chest, and kicked the door shut behind her. The storm roared on outside, but inside the clinic, the air felt charged with a new kind of energy. Lila carried the puppy to the exam table, her steps quick but careful, and laid it down on a clean towel. Under the harsh light, the extent of its injuries became painfully clear. Crushed paws, lacerations, and signs of dehydration. No collar, no tags, just a stray alone and broken. Lila's hands hovered over the puppy, her training warring with her emotions. She named it then without even realizing it. "Ember?" she said softly, the word slipping out as she met its gaze again. That spark in its eyes, it was like a tiny flame refusing to gutter out. "You're Ember, and I've got you now." She pulled on a pair of gloves, her movements decisive despite the tremor in her chest. This was it, no going back. She was breaking every rule in the book, risking everything she'd built. But as she grabbed saline and gauze from the supply cabinet, a fierce determination settled over her. Ember had crawled through a storm to reach her door. Lila wasn't about to let that fight be for nothing. Lila stood over the exam table, the harsh overhead light casting stark shadows across Ember's broken body. The border collie puppy lay still, wrapped in her damp jacket, its shallow breaths fogging the air in tiny, uneven puffs. Rain battered the clinic windows, a relentless drumbeat that matched the pounding in Lila's chest. She'd crossed the line the moment she brought Ember inside, past the point of no return, and now the weight of her decision pressed down on her like the storm outside. Her job, her future, everything hung in the balance. But one look at those trusting brown eyes, dulled by pain, yet still flickering with life, and she knew she couldn't walk away. "Okay, Ember," she whispered, pulling on a fresh pair of latex gloves with a snap. "Let's get you patched." "Up?" Her voice was steady, a lifeline for her own nerves as much as for the puppy. She moved quickly, her hands guided by muscle memory from countless hours of assisting Dr. Hargrove. First, she grabbed a handheld scanner from the drawer and ran it over Ember's matted fur. No microchip, no surprise there. A stray, then, with no one to claim her. The rules echoed in her mind again. Report to animal control, wait for pickup. But Ember's pulse fluttered weakly under Lila's fingers, and waiting wasn't an option. She turned to the supply cabinet, her movements furtive despite being alone. The shelves were stocked with everything she needed: IV fluids, pain meds, antiseptic, but every item she took was a theft, a mark against her record if anyone found out. Her hand hesitated over a vial of ketamine, the sedative she'd need to keep Ember still. "Borrowing," she muttered, shoving the guilt aside as she slipped it into her pocket. She grabbed saline, gauze, and a suture kit, piling them onto a tray with quiet efficiency. The clinic's silence amplified every sound: the clink of glass, the rustle of packaging, making her feel like a thief in her own workplace. Back at the table, Lila assessed Ember's injuries with a clinician's eye. The puppy's front paws were the worst, crushed, likely from a car or a heavy blow, with bones protruding beneath the skin in sickening angles. Blood seeped from a deep laceration on her left leg, and her fur was crusted with mud and older bruises, hinting at a history of neglect. Lila's stomach churned, but her hands stayed steady. She hooked up an IV line, threading the catheter into a vein with practiced precision. The saline dripped slowly, rehydrating Ember's fragile system, while a low dose of pain medication followed, easing the puppy's whimpers into soft, sporadic sighs. "Stay with me, sweet girl," Lila murmured, brushing a gloved finger over Ember's head. The puppy's eyes fluttered, half-lidded but still locked on her, as if anchoring itself to her presence. Time seemed to stretch, the storm outside fading into a distant roar as Lila's world narrowed to the table. She cleaned the wounds first, flushing dirt and debris from the gashes with saline. Each swipe of the gauze revealed more damage, and she winced at the thought of the pain Ember must have endured to drag herself here. "What kind of monster did this to you?" she whispered, her voice thick with anger she couldn't place. The clock ticked past 1 a.m., its hands creeping forward as Lila prepared for the hardest part. She couldn't use the X-ray machine. Its activation would log in the system and alert Dr. Hargrove come morning, so she relied on touch and instinct. Gently probing Ember's front legs, she mapped the fractures in her mind: multiple breaks in the metacarpals, unstable and misaligned. Surgery was out of the question without proper authorization or equipment, but she could stabilize them. She grabbed splint materials from the cabinet, discarded plastic tubing and cotton padding, and sterilized them under the sink, her hands trembling slightly from fatigue. "This isn't textbook," she told Ember, forcing a small, wry smile. "But we're making it work." She sedated the puppy fully now, watching as Ember's breathing slowed into a deep, steady rhythm. The ketamine took hold, and Lila began the delicate task of setting the bones. She aligned the fragments as best she could, her fingers guided by years of anatomy classes and late-night study sessions. The tubing, cut into small supports, framed the paws, while she wrapped them tightly with bandages, checking circulation. With every layer, it wasn't perfect, far from it, but it would hold, giving Ember a chance to heal. By 2:30 a.m., Lila stepped back, peeling off her blood-streaked gloves. Ember lay still, a tiny warrior swathed in white, her chest rising and falling with newfound regularity. The vital signs monitor beeped softly, a reassuring pulse in the quiet room. Lila's back ached, her scrubs clung damply to her skin, and her vision blurred at the edges, but a fierce satisfaction burned in her chest. She'd done it. Against every rule, every rational argument, she'd kept Ember alive. The puppy's eyes cracked open briefly, glazed but grateful, and Lila felt a lump rise in her throat. "You're a fighter," she said, sinking into a chair beside the table. "We're in this together now." The storm had lessened to a steady drizzle, the clinic settling into an eerie calm. Lila knew she couldn't leave Ember here. The morning shift would find her, and questions would follow. She scanned the room, her tired mind racing for a solution. The storage room in the back, rarely used and cluttered with old files, might work. She could hide Ember there, sneak in supplies, keep her alive until what? She didn't know, but it was a start. Gathering the puppy gently in her arms, Lila carried her to the storage room, kicking aside boxes to clear a space. She fashioned a nest from spare towels, set up the IV on a makeshift stand, and tucked Ember in, her small body barely filling the corner. "Rest now," she whispered, brushing a hand over the puppy's ears. She locked the door behind her, heart pounding as she returned to the main room to clean up. Bloodied gauze, empty vials, and stained towels went into a trash bag. She'd dispose of it off-site. The exam table gleamed again, no trace of her midnight rebellion left behind. By 3 a.m., Lila stood at the front door, keys in hand, staring out at the rain-slicked parking lot. Her pickup waited under the dim security light, a beacon of escape. She'd broken every rule she'd sworn to uphold, risked everything she'd worked for, and yet a strange peace settled over her. Ember was alive because of her. That had to mean something. But as she flipped off the lights and stepped into the storm, a nagging thought lingered. What she didn't know yet was that Ember wasn't just any stray, and this one reckless act was about to unravel her life in ways she couldn't imagine. The morning sun struggled to pierce the heavy clouds left by the storm, casting a muted grey light over the clinic parking lot. Lila pulled her pickup into her usual spot, her hands gripping the steering wheel a little too tightly. She hadn't slept. After hiding Ember in the storage room, she'd driven home, showered, and stared at the ceiling until her alarm blared at 6 a.m. Now, at 7:45, she was back, her stomach a knot of nerves and exhaustion. The clinic loomed ahead, its faded sign swaying slightly in the breeze. She had to act normal, keep her secret buried, or everything would collapse. Inside, the waiting room hummed with early activity. Sarah, the receptionist, waved a distracted hello, her attention split between the phone and a stack of charts. Lila forced a smile, her jacket slung over one arm to hide the tremble in her hands. "Busy already?" she asked, aiming for casual. Sarah nodded, barely looking up. "Mrs. Carter's here with her cat, and Dr. Hargrove's running late. Can you take them to exam too?" Lila's heart steadied slightly. Routine was good, a shield to hide behind. "On it," she said, grabbing the chart and heading down the hall. Mrs. Carter stood by the exam room door, a wiry woman with tired eyes and a grey tabby cradled in her arms. Beside her was a girl, no older than 10, her face half hidden by the hood of a navy sweatshirt. She clung to her mother's side, silent and still, her sneakers scuffing the floor. "Good morning," Lila said, softening her tone as she gestured them inside. "This must be Max?" She glanced at the chart, noting the cat's name. Mrs. Carter nodded, offering a faint smile. "Yes, he's been sneezing a lot, probably just a cold, but I wanted to be sure." Lila set Max on the table, her hands moving through the familiar motions of an exam, checking ears, eyes, and throat with gentle precision. The cat purred under her touch, oblivious to the tension coiled in her shoulders. She narrated each step aloud, a habit from training, but her mind kept drifting to Ember. Was the puppy still stable? Had the IV held? She'd check as soon as she could slip away. As she worked, she felt eyes on her, not Mrs. Carter's, but the girl's. Glancing up, she caught the child staring, her gaze intense and unblinking from beneath the hood. Lila paused, meeting those dark eyes for a moment before the girl looked away. "Everything okay?" Lila asked, directing the question to both mother and daughter. Mrs. Carter sighed. "Sam's just quiet today. She's always quiet." Her voice carried a weight Lila recognized, worry laced with resignation. Sam didn't respond, her fingers tightening on her mother's sleeve. Lila nodded, keeping her movements slow and predictable. "Max looks good," she said, shifting focus back to the cat. "Mild respiratory infection. I'll grab some antibiotics, and he'll be fine in a few days." Mrs. Carter relaxed slightly, but Sam's gaze lingered, sharp and curious, excusing. Herself, Lila stepped into the hall, her pulse quickening. This was her chance. She detoured to the storage room, unlocking it with a key she'd borrowed from the desk. Inside, Ember lay curled in the towel nest, her breathing steady but weak. The IV bag hung low, almost empty. Lila knelt beside her, brushing a hand over the puppy's head. "Hey, Ember," she whispered. The collie's eyes cracked open, that spark still there, and her tail gave a faint twitch. Relief flooded Lila, but she moved fast, replacing the IV fluid and checking the splints. The bandages held, no signs of infection yet. "Good girl," she murmured, tucking a fresh towel around her. A soft creak behind her made her freeze. Spinning around, she saw the storage room door ajar, and Sam standing there, silent as a shadow. The girl's hood had slipped back, revealing a pale face framed by dark hair, her eyes wide but not afraid. Lila's heart slammed against her ribs. "Sam, what are you doing here?" she hissed, keeping her voice low. Sam didn't answer, stepping inside instead. Her gaze locked on Ember, and something shifted in her expression, softened like a wall crumbling. Without a word, she sank to her knees beside the puppy, her small hand hovering over Ember's fur. "Careful," Lila warned, but Sam's touch was feather-light, resting on Ember's head with a gentleness that stunned her. The puppy didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned into the contact, a tiny whimper escaping her throat. Sam's lips parted slightly, as if she might speak, but no sound came. Lila watched, caught between panic and awe. "You can't tell anyone," she said, her voice urgent. "She's hurt and I'm helping her, but it's complicated." Sam's eyes flicked to hers, understanding flickering there, and she nodded once, solemn as a vow. Footsteps echoed in the hall, Mrs. Carter calling for Sam. Lila shot to her feet, ushering the girl out. "Go, quick, I'll handle this." Sam slipped away, vanishing around the corner just as her mother appeared. "There you are, Mrs. Carter said, exasperated. "Don't wander off like that." Sam said nothing, her face blank again, but Lila caught the glance she threw back, a secret shared. Lila handed over Max's meds, her hands steady despite the adrenaline surging through her. "He'll be good as new," she said, forcing a smile. Mrs. Carter thanked her and they left, Sam trailing behind like a ghost. Back in the storage room, Lila sank against the wall, her breath ragged. Ember watched her, eyes half open, and Lila felt a strange certainty settle in her chest. Sam's presence had changed something, shifted the air in a way she couldn't explain. The girl hadn't flinched at the blood or the splints. She'd connected with Ember instantly, as if drawn by an invisible thread. Lila rubbed her temples, exhaustion warring with curiosity. Who was Sam, and why had she followed her? There was more to this, she could feel it, but the answers eluded her. The day dragged on, a blur of appointments and forced normalcy. Lila checked on Ember whenever she could, slipping away during lulls to adjust the IV or whisper encouragement. Each time she half expected Sam to reappear, but the girl didn't return. By evening, Lila's nerves were frayed, her secret teetering on the edge of exposure. She locked the storage room again, her mind racing. Ember was stable, but hiding. Her here long-term wasn't sustainable. She needed a plan, a better hiding spot, a way to keep this going without losing everything. As she drove home through the dusk, the image of Sam and Ember lingered. That quiet girl, so still yet so present, had seen something in the puppy that mirrored her own silence. Lila didn't know how or why, but she sensed their stories were tangled in ways she couldn't yet unravel. Ember wasn't just a stray, and Sam wasn't just a bystander. Whatever came next, Lila was in too deep to turn back now. The clinic buzzed with its usual midday rhythm, dogs barking in the kennels, the phone ringing off the hook and the faint hum of the air conditioner struggling against the late summer heat. Lila moved through her tasks on autopilot, her hands steady as she vaccinated a squirming terrier, but her mind was elsewhere. Ember's makeshift sanctuary in the storage room weighed on her like a ticking clock. Every creak of the floorboards, every glance from a co-worker felt like a threat. She'd kept the puppy alive for 2 days now, sneaking in supplies and praying no one noticed the dwindling inventory. But secrets, she knew, had a way of unraveling. It started with Jenny, the chatty vet tech, who always lingered too long at the supply cabinet. Lila was restocking gauze in the exam room when Jenny poked her head in, her blonde ponytail swinging. "Hey, Lila, you see where the extra ketamine went? I swear we had a full box last week." Her tone was light, but her eyes lingered on Lila, a beat too long. Lila's stomach dropped, but she forced a shrug, keeping her voice even. "No idea. Maybe Dr. Hargrove used it on that emergency last Friday." Jenny frowned, unconvinced, but let it slide. For now. By mid-afternoon, the tension snapped. Lila was slipping out of the storage room, a syringe of antibiotics tucked in her pocket, when she nearly collided with Jenny in the hall. The tech's gaze darted past her to the half-open door, and before Lila could close it, Jenny craned her neck. "What's in there?" she asked, her voice sharp with curiosity. Lila slammed the door shut, heart hammering. "Just reorganizing some old files," she lied, stepping in front of it. Jenny's eyes narrowed, but she didn't push yet. Lila knew the clock was ticking louder now. That evening, as the clinic emptied out, Lila made her move. She couldn't risk Ember staying here another night, not with Jenny sniffing around. She waited until the last staff member left, then gathered the puppy in a blanket, IV line and all, and carried her to her pickup. The drive to her friend Tara's place was a blur of nerves and dim headlights. Tara lived on the edge of town, her property a sprawl of overgrown fields and a weathered shed no one bothered with. "No questions asked," Tara had promised over the phone, her voice warm but firm. "Just don't get me in trouble." The shed smelled of dust and old wood, its roof sagging but intact. Lila set Ember down on a pile of blankets, rigging the IV to a nail in the wall. The puppy's eyes followed her, brighter now, her tail giving a weak wag. "You're safe here," Lila whispered, adjusting the splints. She left food, water, and a note with care instructions, just in case, then drove home, exhaustion pulling at her bones. She'd figure out the rest tomorrow. But tomorrow brought Sam. The girl appeared at the clinic again, this time alone, her hoodie pulled tight around her face. She lingered by the reception desk, silent as ever, until Lila finished an appointment. "Sam?" Lila asked, approaching. Cautiously. The girl's eyes met hers, urgent and pleading, and she gestured toward the storage room. Lila's chest tightened. Sam knew. Before she could explain, Sam darted down the hall, forcing Lila to follow. The empty storage room stared back at them, and Sam's face crumpled, her hands clenching into fists. "She's safe," Lila said quickly, lowering her voice. "I moved her, but you can't—" Sam cut her off with a sharp shake of her head, pointing to herself, then out the door. She wanted to help. Lila hesitated, every instinct screaming to keep this contained, but Sam's determination, quiet, fierce, unshakable, won her over. "Fine," she relented. "After my shift. Meet me here." Dusk settled over Tara's property as Lila pulled up, Sam in the passenger seat, clutching a bag of dog treats she'd brought. The shed door creaked. "Open!" and Ember perked up at their arrival, her ears twitching. Sam knelt beside her, offering a treat with trembling fingers. The puppy took it gently, and Sam hummed, a soft, tuneless sound that filled the shed like a whisper of hope. Lila watched, stunned. Mrs. Carter had said Sam hadn't spoken in months, yet here she was, her silence breaking in tiny, fragile pieces for Ember. They worked together in quiet harmony, Lila changing bandages, Sam holding the water bowl steady. Ember's wounds were healing, the swelling down, but her legs still needed time. Lila showed Sam how to check the splints, her voice low and patient. "See? Not too tight, just snug." Sam nodded, mimicking her with careful precision. For an hour the shed was a sanctuary, the outside world held at bay. But sanctuaries, Lila knew, never lasted. The next morning, Dr. Hargrove called her into his office. His desk was a fortress of files, his expression carved from stone. "Care to explain this?" he asked, sliding a blue surgical glove across. The desk, one Lila recognized from the clinic's stock. Her mouth went dry. "Found it in the storage room," he continued, his voice cold, "along with some missing supplies. Jenny says you've been acting strange." "What's going on, Grayson?" Lila's mind raced. Deny it, confess. She settled on a half-truth, her voice steady despite the sweat prickling her neck. "I've been reorganizing like I told Jenny. Must have dropped it." Hargrove's eyes bored into her, unconvinced. "You're on thin ice," he warned. "One more slip, and you're gone. And I'm reporting this to inventory control." He dismissed her with a curt nod, but the threat lingered like smoke. Panic clawed at her as she left the office. Inventory control meant audits, questions. Her theft would surface, and Ember would be found. She had to act fast. That night she returned to the shed, Sam at her side again. The girl's presence had become a quiet anchor, her humming a balm against the rising storm. But as they tended to Ember, headlights swept across the field. Tara's truck followed by another vehicle. Lila's heart sank. Animal control. "They're here," she whispered, grabbing Sam's arm. The girl's eyes widened, but she didn't move, her hand resting protectively on Ember. Tara burst in, breathless. "Lila, my neighbor saw you sneaking around, called it in. I tried to stall them, but—" Tires crunched closer, doors slammed. Lila's mind spun. She could run, hide Ember somewhere else, but where? Sam tugged her sleeve, pointing to the back of the shed, a loose board, a possible escape. But before they could move, a sharp knock rattled the door. "Animal control." "Open up," a voice barked. Lila froze, her choice narrowing to a razor's edge. Give Ember up, lose everything, or fight and risk it all. Sam's humming stopped, her eyes locking on Lila's with a desperate trust. Ember whimpered, sensing the tension. The knock came again, louder. Lila's hands clenched into fists. She'd broken rules to save Ember, but now the stakes were higher than ever, and Sam was in it with her. The shed door rattled under the force of another insistent knock, the animal control officer's voice cutting through the night like a blade. "Open the door or we're coming in." Lila stood frozen, her breath shallow, Ember cradled in her arms. Sam pressed close beside her, her small frame rigid with determination, one hand still clutching the puppy's blanket. Tara hovered near the entrance, her face pale with guilt and fear. The headlights outside painted jagged shadows across the shed's warped walls, turning their sanctuary into a trap. Lila's mind raced. Surrender Ember and face the consequences, or fight a losing battle against the inevitable. The choice felt like a noose tightening around her neck. Sam's hand brushed hers, a silent plea in her dark eyes. Lila looked down at Ember, the border collie's fragile body trembling but alive, her spark still burning despite everything. She'd dragged herself through a storm to survive, and Lila had broken every rule to keep her going. Now Sam, this quiet girl who'd found something in Ember to hold on to, was part of it too. "I can't let them take her," Lila whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Tara stepped forward, her voice shaky. "Lila, they've got a warrant. My neighbor, he saw the supplies, called it theft. I'm so sorry." Before Lila could respond, the door burst open, splintering at the hinges. Two officers stepped in, their flashlights slicing through the dimness. The older one, a broad man with a stern jaw, scanned the scene. Lila clutching Ember, Sam standing defiantly beside her, Tara wringing her hands. "Step away from the animal," he ordered, his tone clipped. "We've got a report of stolen. Clinic property and an unregistered stray. Hand it over." Lila's arms tightened around Ember, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "She's injured. I've been treating her, documented everything. She wouldn't have survived without care." The younger officer, a woman with sharp eyes, softened slightly, but her partner wasn't swayed. "That's not your call. Clinic confirmed missing supplies, and you've got no authorization. Move aside." Sam let out a small, choked sound, her first audible protest, and stepped in front of Lila, arms outstretched as if to shield them both. The officers hesitated, surprised by the girl's sudden defiance. Tara jumped in, her words tumbling out. "Wait. Just listen. There's more." "To this, please." The shed door creaked again and a new figure appeared. Mrs. Carter, Sam's mother, breathless and wide-eyed. She'd followed the commotion after Sam hadn't come home from her walk. Her gaze landed on Ember, and her face crumpled. "Oh my God," she gasped, rushing forward. That's Riley's dog." The officers exchanged a glance, confused, as Mrs. Carter dropped to her knees beside Lila. "Riley, my son, he died last year in a car accident. This puppy, she was with him. We thought she was gone too." Her voice broke, tears spilling down her cheeks. "How did she—" Lila's mind reeled, pieces clicking into place. Ember wasn't just a stray. She'd survived a tragedy, wandered lost and broken, until fate brought her to the clinic. Sam's connection to her made sense now, a thread tying her silence to the puppy's pain. The older officer frowned, lowering his flashlight. "You're saying this dog's yours?" Mrs. Carter nodded, reaching for Ember with trembling hands. Yes, look, her collar's gone, but those markings... It's her. She turned to Lila, gratitude mingling with disbelief. You saved her. The younger officer stepped back, murmuring into her radio, while her partner's sternness faltered. If she's claimed, that changes things. He said gruffly, but the clinic's pressing charges for theft. Mrs. Carter stood, wiping her eyes. No, wait, I'll talk to them. This isn't right. She saved my son's dog, our family's dog. Her voice hardened with resolve. Sam hasn't spoken since Riley died, but she's been different lately. I think it's because of her. She gestured to Ember, then to Lila. Please, let me fix this. The officers relented, agreeing to delay the pickup until Mrs. Carter could sort it out. They left with a warning, charges were still pending, but the shed emptied, the night settling into a fragile calm. Lila sank onto the blankets, Ember still in her lap, Sam beside her. Mrs. Carter knelt too, stroking the puppy's fur. Thank you, she whispered to Lila. For her, and for Sam. The girl hummed softly, her fingers tracing Ember's. Ears, a sound of healing breaking through her silence. The next morning, Mrs. Carter stormed into the clinic, Ember's story spilling out to Dr. Hargrove. She brought photos of Riley with the puppy, proof of ownership, and a fierce plea. Lila didn't steal, she saved. You can't punish her for that. Word spread fast. Clients, staff, even Tara rallied behind her, flooding the clinic with calls and letters. Faced with the evidence and public pressure, Dr. Hargrove backed down, dropping the charges but placing Lila on probation. One more stunt, he warned, and you're out. Lila nodded, relief washing over her. She'd kept her job barely, and Ember was safe. Days later at Tara's shed, Lila watched Ember take her first wobbly steps, her splintered legs trembling but holding. Sam sat cross-legged in the dirt, clapping softly, her face alight with a rare smile. Then it happened. Sam's voice, small but clear, broke the silence. She's home, she said, looking at Ember, then Lila. The words hit like a thunderclap, a miracle born from months of quiet trust. Mrs. Carter, watching from the sidelines, sobbed openly, hugging Tara in gratitude. The shed became a haven after that. With community support, Lila turned it into a small rehab space for strays, funded by donations from those moved by Ember's story. Sam visited daily, her voice growing stronger, her bond with Ember a lifeline. Pulling her back from grief, Lila kept her head down at the clinic, proving her worth, but her heart lived in that shed, where healing happened on its own terms. Lila leaned against the shed door one evening, watching Sam and Ember play in the fading light. The puppy chased a ball with a lopsided gait, and Sam laughed, a sound once unimaginable. This wasn't just a story of survival, it was a testament to the power of compassion over convention. Rules matter, but so do lives, human and animal, alike. Sometimes the right choice isn't the safe one. It's the one that dares to see beyond protocol to the beating heart beneath. Ember and Sam healed each other, and Lila learned that true strength lies in risking everything for what's right. In a world quick to judge, let this be a reminder. Kindness can mend what rules alone cannot. Break them wisely, and you might just build something unbreakable.